Everybody. I wanted to make some free brainstorming video because there are so many issues that require actually individual research, and yet we actually are short of time, and I don't want to bother you with unimportant stuff or stuff that is repetitive. There are the occasional violent crimes, jihadi attacks, and so forth, but you know already that Europe is facing an onslaught from that ideology, and that it's violent and has its spikes occasionally. And so you have probably heard of this from other news, and I'm not going to expand on that. The more pressing crisis right now is, of course, the energy crisis. And this week, Germany has decided not to continue the nuclear power facilities. 3 remaining power plants are going to be shut down in December. Now, do I believe them? No, I actually don't. I actually think that they will shut it down. The energy prices will shoot through the roof, and heaven and hell is going to move. And for whatever reason, the Greens will be pushed over. I think this is now a deliberate acceleration by the Green Party people against the Green Party people, because they have whipped up their idiot base so much for so long that these people cannot they cannot entertain the idea of convincing their own people anymore. I mean, they know that they are a cult. The leaders, the intelligent leaders, not every leader, not every former leader is intelligent, right? But those inside that movement know that they have created everybody has to do this or that, has a hand on, get everyone involved. They have developed this cult that cannot be talked to, and in this cult you have to shut down all sources of energy at the same time, because this is what they have been whipped up to believe. And they have done this with I think, a standard left-wing approach. And there are a lot of people mulling their way through the Wicked Library in the sociology department, and talking about, how from Karl Marx over the Frankfurt School, over some third intellectuals in, let's say, in France, the entire hot mess of social justice warriors and hyper-environmentalism and so on emerged. I'm not quite sure really if one has really read the other, and if that is so terribly important. But what is important, I think, is the overall approach these people have, and it's always getting more people into their fold by telling them that whatever problem they have, not even problem, whatever desire they have, the reason for them not to have their wishes fulfilled to the teetotal is because there is an enemy. That is the standard line of, that's the commonality of all the left-wing approaches to environmentalism, to racism, to the various topics. It's always, you see a problem, there are even people denying the existence of the problem, or people who just want to put it into perspective, but they are communicated to those true believers or to those to be recruited as they're just enemies. The reason the world isn't the perfect place where the lion lies next to the lamb is because there are evil, white, capitalist, fascist, God knows what, you know all these terms. All the problems can be solved if evil people are pushed aside. And this causes fanaticism, because you're not talking about any given problem, like, let's say, how to provide energy. The reason why, let's say, uranium has to be mined, and there are ecological downsides to that, and the reason for, let's say, coal has to be dug up, and the ecological downsides of that. The reason for those downsides, which are habitually overestimated, is that there are evil people, selfish, evil people. They just don't want the world to be good. That is the key approach. Now you can arrive at the idea that there are evil people, and yes, there are evil people, but your adult approach normally is you look into a problem first, and there you may meet a person that has some nefarious interest, and that's why you can't progress in solving the problem. But an adult approach is you look at the problem. The typical left-wing approach, now this is of course a generalization, but it's also a true one. A typical approach of these ideologies is you start with the war. You start with the class war, you start with the race war, you start with the gender, sex war, or the homo versus heterosexual war. You just start the war. The reason why homosexuals don't live in paradise is because heteronormative, I don't even know how to pronounce it, but there are all these wars going on. Now this has accumulated in, of course, a cult that cannot be talked to, and a leadership that is familiar with that, yet they have to act, against the breakdown of society. And I think what will happen is that they are going to burn coal through the winter despite Fridays for Future, and they will fall short of that because not enough coal can be extracted, can be delivered, and they will restart. They will restart the nuclear power plants. They will push the laws and so on through the parliament. Bones break, whatever. They will push it through, and we will see a restart of some of those nuclear power plants. I cannot guarantee for this. It's just really, hope is the last thing that is to die. And I sincerely hope that they come around and change their mind, because I think they have not thought a lot of things through. Actually, I think they have not thought anything through. And on top of that, we have the monetary crisis, the inflation, which is to some degree based on the energy crisis, but it's also something on top of it. The European Central Bank has extended its credits since 2008. Then they got their balance sheet somewhat in order. But I have not looked into it in great detail. I suspect also that there could be some shenanigans going on. But they believe they had it in order for some time. And then the coronavirus hit, and the money printing, which is actually credited expansion, that shot through the roof. And it also shot through the roof in the United States, as you know. So this is now, of course, the main source of the inflation. There's too much monetary capacity around, and it has to be soaked back into the central bank. And what does this mean, soaking back the money that's floating around? It does mean that the central bank can no longer give as many credits that it used to give. This will kick in sooner or later. The Americans are going ahead, and this is normally the case because the US dollar is the most important currency in the world. They are going first, and the European Central Bank will slowly follow the hiking. They will tighten the money supply, so they will reduce the credits given to the commercial banks and the commercial banks to the businesses, and this will lead to bankruptcies and layoffs. This is the connection, right? So the central bank does no longer give the credits, and therefore, down the chain, your business will not receive as much foreign capital, and therefore you have to admit bankruptcy, and then you have to lay off your staff. This is the chain, and it is going to come very fast. And I've thought about, when would be the right time. The war continues, the energy problem continues, and we hear through the radio, through the television, you must be thrift with your water, you must be careful with your energy, and so on and so on. And the way you can reduce demand, and the most fair way you can reduce demand is actually to call it a day and shut down operations that are not profitable. Your household, your individual cannot do much. And we are talking about actually how much time you stand under the shower. Okay, so a lot of activist media girls, are giving little tips on how you can save money and but the way people become very cautious about the resources available to them is to not give them credit. So a lot of unprofitable businesses will have to go bankrupt. This is the way it has to go. It is a very painful way. And the reason why this is feared is because the war is still going on. People fear the instability, and people fear that the Russians are successful with their propaganda, and as our civilization declines, people just wonder, in what ways are we still better than, let's say, the Russian civilization or the Muslim civilization? I think we will also see a lot of converts to Islam. And yet I think it is unavoidable, and the longer you wait with raising the interest rates, the worse it becomes. And this overall destabilization that we are going to face is unavoidable, and I think we are through it the earlier it begins. But also we have to keep in mind that human behavior is not a natural law. There are a lot of people attracting many viewers with that comfortable idea, which I think is also part of paganism, and I'm antagonizing pagans a little bit. Even though if it's your private practice, please don't feel offended. But I feel like there's this idea that, stuff doesn't matter, all goes up and down, life doesn't matter, why wake up in the morning, why preserve anything, this idea has been repopularized in the West through an affinity by some people to Buddhism and Hinduism, but it's a universal concept, like nothing really matters. If you wish for something, if you have any ambition, you're just basically wasting your energy. And in this line of thinking, if nothing matters, everything just runs in cycles, like the moon, like the stars, and like the economic cycles, and like civilizational cycles. And you have a lot of people who say, the Roman Empire also fell, why should not our empire fall? And these people, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit too harsh, but these people seem not to even have noticed that we are not an empire. We don't have an emperor. But the idea that the civilization in and of itself just rises and falls as a basic law is actually mistaken. You can push back, and it's actually your decision to either accept decline or to fight and reverse it. When Margaret Thatcher took over Great Britain, it was in shambles. It was the smallest GDP per capita in Western Europe. Even East Germany had a higher GDP per capita than Great Britain. And it came from a decline of, the former colonies just calling independence one after the other. And the overall perception was nobody likes the British, and nobody wants to deal with them. And, the world is moving away, and they are no longer a great power. And there is this overall sense of decline, plus the enormous economic decline that people experienced in their daily lives. And then she came along, and 12 years later, it was one of the strongest nations on earth again. So it is actually your decision to go this way or that way. What also happened this week is that the peasants in the Netherlands protested, and this riot situation, police shot at the tractors, and the reason for that is that our moronic EU bureaucrats have set another upper limit for a chemical, and at this time I think it was nitrate, but I haven't actually looked into the topic in detail. But what we see, what comes from Brussels all the time are these directives telling us how much of a substance should be in what place. So they have reversed our normal legal system that usually told people do X or don't do X. And the new fashion we are controlled is by telling us the status something is going to be. They envision something, so they don't even bother with the nitty-gritty of, trying to figure out what's the problem. They just envision something, and they just decree to the peoples of Europe how they are going to make it happen. So they have decided that in the groundwater, or for whatever place, I've not looked into the details, in Europe there should be a nitrate concentration of blah blah blah. So people are protesting against it because the way it was implemented in the Netherlands apparently comes with professional bans for peasants. People are supposed to give up their homes, their land, because some bureaucrats have decided to limit the concentration of whatever chemical in a given area. Now, what problem does this environmentalist decree actually solve? Is the Netherlands a country where people are intoxicated with, let's say, nitrate, and this decree is now changing things to the better? No, the problem that is supposed to be solved is the justification of the salaries of Euro bureaucrats. That is the problem. And for that problem, the justification of salaries of people who are useless, we have to axe the food production in the midst of a war in Ukraine, right? This is what we now have to do. And soon chickens will come to roost, because this is not just a Netherlands thing. It's the EU decree, so sooner or later more and more countries will chime in as if nothing happens, as if the war doesn't exist. They claim to be super concerned about climate change, and what, if you are, okay, let's talk about that issue. But they never really go into a problem, and that is my problem with them. They never have a problem, they just have solutions, and not even solutions, they just have, we have envisioned a nitrate concentration in the blah 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 water of so much blah blah blah. So they just come with a vision, and they love to use that word vision as if they are on drugs. And they say, we just do what we fancy, and you sort out the details, and this is then freedom, because you sort out. So we create a problem, you sort out, and that is what you are supposed to accept as freedom. And that is justifying our service, because we are giving you that framework. Framework sounds so nice. So what we have is this cluster of problems, and it's going to be very difficult to resolve. I think we need a hike in the interest rates of the ECB to cut down the demand, because this is the only way we can use resources effectively. And this means that a lot of companies and NGOs, by the way, will go broke. It's going to happen. It's a very bitter pill. And conservatives, we unfortunately are always the messengers of bad news. But this is just how things are. And we have to now consider that we need a leadership like Margaret Thatcher once was, that can move us out of the crisis, that says there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Decline is not inevitable. It isn't. It is all up to us. And I hope we will sort that out.